Right, so I think everyone's in. So welcome everyone. We're doing a webinar today on unlocking creativity, so overcoming challenges for photographers and content creators with Synology. And I'm joined by Peter Morgan, as you can see. He's a wedding, commercial, and headshot photographer, as well as a drone pilot. And he's worked in the computer and telecoms industry from the age of 16 as an Apple and Windows engineer, backup, disaster recovery specialist, and has been supporting individuals and businesses just like yourselves on this webinar today for over 25 years now. So Peter, can you tell us about how Tech for Talks came about?
Well, first of all, can I just say thank you as well for inviting me to speak today. It's a great opportunity to be able to chat to everybody and kind of answer any questions that they have, not just with Synology, but regarding technology as well and Synology's place within that. How did Tech for Talks come about? Well, that's an interesting story, really. I had an IT company, not Tech for Talks, but supporting Apple users and doing Wintel machines, networks, and things like that for over 10 years. And really got to the point when my kids were growing up that I was working all the time, didn't really have much of a social life, and had the opportunity to sell my company and step away from IT, which was great. And I really became a photographer just by chance. A friend of mine asked me to photograph his wedding because I was the only person he knew at the time with a digital camera. And so after doing one wedding, someone else asked me to do theirs, and I'm now 283 weddings in.
Wow.
Plus we do we've got a contract for the Olympic swimming, the Commonwealth Games, and obviously we work with quite a lot of big manufacturers as well. Tech for Talks really came about because during the pandemic, I couldn't photograph anybody. We weren't allowed to leave the house. And it allowed me to help other photographers, which I'd been doing anyway through the BIPP and the Guild of Photographers and the Societies of Photographers organizations. It allowed me to be able to sit at home remotely with nothing but a computer and an internet connection to be able to help people all over the world, which is what we do now as well. I had a lady contacted me from New Zealand the other day, and we do loads of work for people in the States as well. So the time difference is the only thing that kills me, really. But yeah, Tech for Talks was designed because when you have technology as a whole, it's such a wide expanse of knowledge you have to have that it's impossible to know everything. But being a professional photographer means that I've got blinkers on really into what photographers need and the kind of problems that they experience, really. So it helps me to drill down, and so yeah, so that's how Tech for Talks started, really. It started initially as a way to earn money during the lockdown, and then has progressed now to this kind of massive thing where we're being asked to speak to photographers and advise them on kind of workflow and backup and disaster recovery, which are as essential as knowing your magic triangle, your ISO, your shutter speed, and everything else.
So you mentioned there about sort of helping people with the tech side. What are some of the biggest challenges that you've seen that photographers face?
Well, that's a good question. Photography these days, people think the digital has made photography easier, and it has to a certain extent, but some of the biggest problems that we're facing at the moment for commercial photographers is storage, archiving, and accessibility and scalability. So I'll break that down roughly. So storage, obviously, we're talking about with wedding photographers, you're talking about thousands of files per wedding sometimes. Accessibility, being able to access those files very quickly, as well as previous weddings or previous work that you've created. So accessibility and is key. A lot of photographers that I see will use single hard drives
Yeah.
per year, which doesn't really give you an opportunity to have a proper, fully optimized workflow and
Yeah.
backup, and certainly makes accessing old work very difficult. You've got to remember, or at least have a good cataloging system for remembering what files are where and on
Yeah.
what drives. Lightroom does that to a certain extent, but then there's a certain amount of user interaction involved. And the other things as well that is kind of file sizes in general of photographic file sizes are getting larger. Um, Average file sizes between 50 and 80 meg in size. And that's before you start looking at the size of TIFFs as well, with multi-layers in Photoshop. So storage is going to be a big thing, and the expandability of
Yeah.
storage is also a very big thing. How do we create something that grows, scales, and moves with us as our business moves? So that there's that really. The other things as well is that a lot of people are very worried about AI. I'm constantly asked about AI. Is it going to take over our jobs? Where do you see it fitting in? For me, I've lent into this
Yep.
for the simple reason that AI is something that needs to have a bigger discussion about it. But it also it's how we use it to interrogate our storage systems and certainly allow them to help catalog and find old photographs.
Yep.
If you look at Adobe Sensei, the query, search query engine, where it allows AI to intelligently understand what's in photographs, it certainly makes keywording a bit easier as well. So those are some of the things, but not kind of exhaustive really as to what we kind of handle on a day-to-day basis, really.
So how would you say, sort of, with the challenges that you've mentioned, how would you overcome these? Stop sharing in case you want to share anything yourself.
Yeah, well, a little thing, if first of all, I think, is helping photographers to understand where the fallibilities lie, where their systems can be optimized without too much of an impact on the way they work, their workflow, so that we're not changing the way you work too much. We're just using technology to free your creative mind by taking all the steps which previously might have been manual steps, and trying
Yeah.
to automate as much as we can. So yeah, I'll give you an example. Overcoming challenges. So at the moment, we're looking at using 10 gig switches and network cards and things like that.
Yep.
So a standard computer might have a gigabit, which is 1,000 megasecond cable in it, port in the back, which really limits the speed that we can transfer data back and forth. With the new Macs and PCs, PCs especially as well, because if you've got a built PC, you can install PCI network cards that allow for the transfer of faster data through the use of 10 gig network cards, which aren't not just faster, but it allows editing from central storage devices.
Yep.
So I've been using Synology as just as an example. I've been using Synology since 2016 with an 8-bay NAS,
Yep.
which sits on my network, and I can edit directly from that network storage device. The 8 bays in the NAS mean that the expandability is there.
Yep.
So the expandability is there initially, because if I needed to have more space, I could add an extra drive. And the way Synology systems work, it allows scalability for my business without too much, without too much disruption.
Yep.
I mean, the other thing as well is to look at optimizing workflows. By that, I mean taking every step that you make as a photographer, really from camera to client. So, for instance, that might be when you're taking photographs. Are you using a camera with 2 card slots? Are the photographs stored on both cards? Are they
Yep.
optimized so that at some point during that your shoot, your day, your event, those are backed up? Where are they backed up? How are they backed up? And in what locations? Ease of use is everything. You can have the best solution in the world, and photographers won't use it because it becomes a little bit more complicated. So overcoming challenges really is about changing the mindset of photographers as
Yep.
much as it is incorporating new technologies.
That's it. So what sort of end-to-end solution would you then suggest for maybe the people that are watching today? And maybe if you have
Um,
any examples you can show.
yes, let me see if I can show you something interesting. Okay, share, share my screen. There you go. Okay, so here we go. So this is something that I preach to people. Can you see the screen there?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. So this is a typical example of a home studio setup. You've got your broadband coming in here. At the moment, I'm using BT gigabit fiber, which comes into my network switch here. The reason that you'd use a network switch is because on the back of your router, you might only have 4 ports. Some of them only have 2 ports if it's an older router, which means you can only connect a certain amount of devices. So when you look at connecting your network storage, your computer, maybe you've got a laptop, if some people have Hive or separate Wi-Fi connectors, you're then looking at those ports being used up very quickly. When you look at the Synology devices as well, so I'm currently using a DS 1821 Plus, which has 4 network ports on the back. Now, the reason it has 4 ports is I can connect 4 cables to it and connect them to the network switch. And what that allows me to do is when my computer is plugged in here, rather than just pulling the data via 1,000 megasecond cable, I'm using 4
Yep.
1,000 megasecond cables, which essentially aggregates the data across the 4 cables, meaning that each cable is pulling, for want of a better explanation, each cable is pulling a quarter of a specific file, making it significantly faster in transferring data, meaning that I can edit on my laptop from a network storage device, which is plugged into my switch elsewhere in the house.
Yep.
And that's works really well because previous to now, you might have had something like this, a little working drive here, which at the moment I'm using the Synology's B drive. So in the past, I've used Lacy, Seagate. The only important factor with this is that you're using a solid state drive so that the speed is there for you to be able to edit.
Yep.
When you're using something such as Lightroom, storing data on old SATA type hard drives is going to take longer to access. So having a working drive, and I'll explain how all this fits together now, will mean that when you're importing your files, you'd have a working drive and a storage drive. So how
Yep.
does this all fit together? And what is that big box down the bottom right there? So, yeah. So although you may not think it, power goes off lots of times during the day. You might have a blackout where the power goes off completely, or you might have what's called a brownout, which is where the power flicks on and off, but you won't actually notice it. So this is a UPS. This is an uninterruptible power. Try saying that on a Saturday morning. Uninterruptible power supply. And essentially, all it is a big battery. And in there, I've got my network switch, my broadband, my network storage device, so that if the power goes off, this device will keep this running for up to 20 minutes. The time depends on what model you buy, how big the battery is, and how many devices you have plugged into it. The Synology integrates perfectly with APC, and it'll even email me and tell me when the power's gone off and when the UPS is taken over, and it tells me when it comes back on as well, which is great. So a typical workflow might be you come back from your shoot, you put your cards into your computer and import them into Lightroom. Now, Lightroom allows you to import your pictures to more than one location on import, which I'll show you in a second. When you import them to a working drive, okay, you can also choose to use a second location, and then you put those pictures onto your NAS storage, which then, for me, overnight, backs up to my Synology storage, which is online storage that I've got that basically takes a big image of everything, dumps it into the cloud for access anywhere at any time. I've also used Backblaze as well, which backs up certain other files and things that are less important to my business, but not necessarily photographs, things like documents and other information. It's a good second backup for things that are important to my business. So let's have a little look how Lightroom works in that respect, okay? So I'm just going to
Yep.
minimize this here. Minimize this. And if I come down to Lightroom here, there you go. That was last week's wedding. So although it rained most of the day, I had a small window of about 20 minutes where I managed to get him outside to get some pictures. Okay. So if I come back to library here, mine may look slightly different to yours because I've turned off lots of the things that I don't need by right-clicking on the header here and just unselecting things. I like things to be very uncluttered.
Yep.
Okay, so when I click import here, and if I put my card in, they'll show up under the source here. Now, up the top here, it's very important to choose copy rather than add. You'd only really use add if you're adding files that are already on your network storage device that aren't in Lightroom. So we're going to choose copy here. Now you can see up here in the top right, this is where it's choosing to for me to store locally. And by that, I mean on a device plugged into or an internal drive. Now, internal drives are a big no-no. Don't store anything on your internal drives. If your computer fails, if you have a virus, if it's on a PC or a Mac that affects your internal hard drive workings, then you're going to lose your files. So I recommend don't store anything on the internal drives of the computers. Also, too many files will mean that your computers will slow down, and that's one thing you don't want. Okay, so your first selection is to store on your folder, and from there I would choose other destination, and then I choose my B drive. It's not attached at the moment, but that would be my working drive. Okay. The second one would be make a second copy to, which you can see here. And there I can choose folder, and although I'm not in the house at the moment, I can choose my network storage, my network storage device,
Yep.
which would appear in locations and the network here. And that would then put everything onto my NAS so as a second copy. So people say, well, what's the point in that, right? Because you've just got two copies. So Lightroom, I'm just going to shift you out the way, Thomas. Okay, if I click cancel here, Lightroom has the ability to be able to store your Lightroom data alongside your raw image as what's called an XMP file. So an XMP file is a small little text file. We're talking tiny files here that allow you to be able to, let me give you an example. Let me show you. So if I go to Show in Finder, and I can see this file here. This is the TIFF actually that I've edited, but there's the original raw file. So you can see, look, that there, that's the original raw file. Obviously, in Photoshop, I've removed the car and a few other things. And stacked it in Photoshop. This is the XMP file for it. So if I open this with, I click on Other and Text Edit, here we go, because it is just a text file. Okay, so I'm going to open here. You can see, look, in here is all the information that Lightroom stores, everything from the cameras to what settings I use, what white balance, how I've altered my blacks, everything to do with that image. But yet that file size is only 8 kilobytes. Just to give you an idea, the old floppy disks, remember those 3¼ things? They were 1.44 megabytes. And this is 8 kilobytes, just to give you an idea of how small these files are. All it is a text file. So once I've finished editing all my pictures, you can either, okay, go to select all your files, go to metadata and save metadata to files, or you can go into Lightroom Classic and go to Catalog Settings, and the third tab along says automatically write changes into XMP. Now this will write all your changes into an XMP file. The first time you tick this, if you've already got photographs in your gallery, it'll take a little while to write all the XMPs, but it is turned off by default. Now, what this means is once I've edited all my pictures here, so if I look, so all the ones I've edited for this wedding here now, I can literally, what I would normally do is create a folder, call it completed. Here we go. And then just shift all the pictures into the completed folder. Just pop those into there. There you go. They're already in there. There you go. And then I can literally go to Show in Finder. Look, here's all the completed images with all the XMPs. So all I need to do then is copy the XMPs, which are tiny, and the TIFF there, because that's the one I've edited locally. This JPEG is a drone image, so that'll be edited separately as well and copied across. And just copy those and drop them into the folder on the network storage device where these files are. The only thing you've got to make sure that you don't do is rename the files on import. The files have to have the same name because obviously you're editing XMPs that relate to files. And what that'll do is that will make sure that initially when you come through the door, your data is in 2 locations. Technically it's on 3 locations because it's on your cards, it's on your working drive, and it's in your NAS. And when that NAS my NAS is set to back up every night, so it will back up into the cloud and it will store technically in 4 places. So I can then take those cards away, format them, ready for the next job, knowing that once I've finished the edits on the working drive, all I do is copy the XMPs across, and then all my edits are then on the NAS, which is a RAID array, which means that the data is stored across multiple drives, which gives me a bit of redundancy if one of the drives fails. But it's also stored in the cloud then as well, in my case in 2 places, in two separate places as well. Does that kind of make sense there? So and moving these
Definitely.
XMPs is very, very fast process. The reason I do this bit manually is because I might choose which ones I want to edit and choose which ones I don't want to edit. And that saves me a space, but also lets me know I can literally come back to here and instantly see all the photographs that I've not edited. So there you go. There's a couple of the groom. He's got dark circles under his eyes. So maybe we'd edit those, what have you. So that's the reason why we would work in this particular way, really. So if I stop sharing there for a second, there you go, and that should make sense then. There you go. So yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
No, that's brilliant. I mean, we've made everything look really good there, and I'm conscious that people are going to think it's just making Synology look good.
Absolutely.
So I'll turn it a different way and say, what are the biggest challenges you faced with using a Synology NAS? So that it's not just a Synology's great webinar, maybe what's not so worked so well.
Yeah, and I appreciate those of you that are staying right to the end, because this is very interesting. Obviously, before Synology, I used a lot of different devices. I've tried Buffalo, Lacey, Seagate. The reason I sat and ended with Synology is because this is a perfect solution for me. The reason why it's a better solution really is that the scalability is there, but some of the challenges that I see is that this is a premium end product. And when you look at this is a 10-year solution. Just to give you an idea, I had a DS 1817, which I bought in 2017, and ultimately when I upgraded to the 1821, I got rid of the old device. It was still actually working perfectly, but the newer device had some more features that I liked. And it had worked, for a number of years. This
Yeah.
is a 10-year solution. This will grow with your business. You know, people look at it and go, "Oh my gosh, that's a lot of money to spend out on a particular product." And whilst I always recommend the 8-bay NAS because of the ability, the chance that you can upgrade with extra drives without having
Yeah.
to buy extra units. You can start off with something like the 4-bay units or the 5-bay enclosures as well and grow from there. But ultimately, yeah, cost is obviously a big factor for photographers, and especially if you're looking at the difference between someone going out and buying a new piece of glass,
Yeah.
and buying a network storage device. So many photographers I know will say, "Oh, I'll just buy a 4 terabyte drive from
Yeah.
the internet," but don't be fooled by it. This is this is the solution. I've been doing this for a long time, and we've built these for very, very famous working photographers. With one photographer had 3.4 million photographs stored on his Synology, and it continues to grow with him.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's the kind of challenges we come across really, is people look at it and go, "Oh my gosh, that's a lot of money to spend out." But when you spread that across 10 years, this is guaranteed this is going to be less than you're already paying. And the advantages are you can get access to all your old data. You can
Yeah.
expand. It's scalable, So yeah. So there you go. Look, 11 o'clock. I did say that. That you might need to rein me in with this, but yeah. So cool.
That's perfect. So if people want to have I mean, we'll have a Q&A
Ask
session
me
afterwards,
anything you
but
like.
if people want to talk to you after this, what's the best way? I'll put a contact page up now anyway, but what's the best way
Yeah.
people can get hold of you?
Brilliant stuff. So just drop me a little email. I'm on Facebook as well. You can get me on Facebook, Peter James Morgan. Just drop me a little message there. Um, follow us on Instagram as well. My Instagram follower is terrible for tech for talks, really, because we're so busy, we're so busy just dealing with day-to-day problems and solving people's solutions that I don't post on there as much as I should. But there is more coming, I promise you. So, and we've got some really interesting things in the pipeline as well. Obviously, we're working with Synology to bring you the best solutions, and we'll be featuring a 10 gig network as well, for those of you that do video as well as editing photographs. That's going to be something that we're going to be workshopping and showing you how to do if that's your bag as well. So yeah, so just find me on any of those. You can scan the QR code and that should take you to the website. If not, just drop me a message anywhere. You can find me.
If you've got any queries for Synology, then obviously you've got our UK sales email there. But by all means, use Peter for anything first, at least. And then if you're stuck, or I don't believe he won't be able to help. But if there's anything else that you need, you can come to us. But that's everything we have for you today. So I will say thank you and tune in next time.